This will be a continuation of last month talk on dream yoga. Oh, thank you, Lost Horizon. I think she did log out and back in. Okay, I think she's trying that again. In my blog and a few other places, so that we can hear the whole thing. If anything ceases to work, we'll have a couple of options. There is a part of the brain that is in charge of receiving all the raw data from the senses of the physical body. Everything that is being registered by the skin, by the eardrums, by the eyes, the olfactory and gustatory receptors, it's all coming in at once, unadulterated and without discrimination. Every signal that comes into the system, it's coming to this area at the base of the brain that is receiving the information from the senses. Now, this information, as it comes to the brain first, is raw data. It has not been cataloged. It has not been put in any kind of order. It has not been filtered yet. It is all there as the organism is capable of perceiving with the senses. Now, we have already talked about how the human senses, the senses of the physical body, are only able to perceive a limited range of vibrations. Within this limited range of vibration, the information would be so overwhelming that if the brain was not filtering most of the input out, we would be unable to distinguish what we are perceiving. There would be so much noise, so much light, so much perception that it would be impossible to navigate, to make decisions, or to assess the situation around us. So the brain, first of all, decides what input it's going to be passed on to the appropriate areas of the brain, where it's going to be coded, it's going to be put in order, it's going to be stored, and it's going to be analyzed, all by very fast processes. In the end, we have created this environment in the brain, this three-dimensional hallucination, which is a holographic representation of the world around us. This thing that we call reality is a holographic representation of what the senses are receiving. And we have to understand that most of what the senses receive is actually discarded. Most of it doesn't make it. Most of it is set aside as being completely irrelevant, destructive, or distracting. The brain has been constructing this reality from the moment we were born, and it has been pruning the reality. And when we successfully manage to create the world, and we know we have successfully created the world, when the tribe into which we were born acknowledges us as full members of the tribe, and I'm able to navigate this world and communicate with the other members that I see in this world, with the other avatars that I encounter inside this environment. So I find myself inside this simulation of reality, encounter other avatars in it. Those avatars are also creations within my simulation that stand for other people. The father, the mother, the friend, my brother, my enemy, the stranger. I assign specific names. I recognize them. They exhibit certain behavior. And I live my life. Now, in order to effectively navigate my way through this environment, which presents itself to me as a very elaborate world, full of mysteries, full of dangers, and full of rewards, full of friends and enemies, I have to also create a representation of myself, an avatar, which is an image that carries my own consciousness. I also create this inside the simulation. It is my own avatar. It is what I call myself. This myself is an image that is designed to live inside this reality construct. The other avatars that look at me, interact with me, talk about me, and give me feedback. I encounter the ones who are happy, who are sad, who are angry, who attack me, who feel attacked by me. Those who are my friends, those who are my family. And I live a life inside this environment, and this life keeps changing. The environment keeps changing. I keep adding new information. I keep discarding ideas that no longer work. And so it goes. Creating in this my life. Hold on 1 second. There seems to be a sound problem. This three-dimensional representation that my brain is creating has been created following patterns of behavior, language, and interactions that I have learned from the other avatars, from the other humans, from the other people that I find inside this simulation. It is obvious then that this simulation that I have created over time by engaging the senses with my frontal cortex is pretty much a dream. in its own right. It is not the reality as it actually and factually exists outside myself that I'm engaging with. I am engaging it, but indirectly. I am engaging it from a control center, this brain, which by itself is not directly perceiving the world outside of me. It is only perceiving the world as it has been recreated inside myself. Now, the brain is a highly efficient system, and as such, it is programmed to leave outside most of the information that comes in and to use the data bank that it has created over the years. And in fact, when we're dealing with a human world, the data bank of information that it has accumulated over many generations, archetypes, stories, and worldviews. Let me give you an example. When you're driving and your eyes are centered on the road in front of you, you see the visual information that comes through. Then you look at the rear view mirror and you look at the side mirrors. Then you look at your speedometer. Then you look at the road again. Then you look at the person you're talking to. Then you look again to the road. You look at the sign on the side of the road, and so on. Now, when the eyes move from one point to the other, the receptors in the eye can perceive what they are looking at when it's not moving. Then when the eye moves from point A to point B, it ceases to record what is in between point A and point B. It only sees point A and then it sees point B. And in between, the eye is blind. The eye doesn't see anything. We only see that point where our eyes are focusing. We see point A and we see point B. Between point A and point B, darkness. Yet it doesn't appear to be that way. Even if you try it right now and look at the screen in front of you, and then look to the side at a second point inside the room where you are, it will seem like you see this blurry image that moves through, and then you see point B. And when you come back, you again see a blurring image passing by very quickly till you come to point A again. Now that blurry image, we have come to believe and act as if it is something real that we are watching. And yet what is happening is that the brain is filling in the information, making us believe that we are seeing a world that is real and three-dimensional in front of us. Yet we know from neuroscience that we do not see it. The brain represents it. And it is the same thing with colors and shadings. Colors are not something that we perceive directly from the world. Rather, our brain fills in the colors on what we see so that we are able to perceive as if we are seeing in 3 dimensions, as if we're seeing nuances of shape, of size, and of perspective. Every eye receives a 2-dimensional impression. The brain puts together these 2 images that the eyes receive and present it to the brain as a 3-dimensional perspective. So we seem to be watching a 3-dimensional world, but in fact, we are looking at a simulation of a 3-dimensional world put together from 2-dimensional images. Now, the brain does this not to deceive us. The brain does this because this has been the way in which we are dealing with the natural world around us. And every species of living creatures in the planet is attempting the same thing, attempting a way to attune their organism, their nervous system, to the optimal way of dealing with this world outside. We have created this human dimension in order to be able to live in this world. But for the most part, we never perceive the world directly. We only perceive it through the senses. And not only through the senses, we perceive it within the dream that we have created, based on the input that we are choosing from the senses. Now, this 3-dimensional hallucination that we call reality has been formed in the exact same way that a dream is formed. And those dreams are being formed over and over again in a much more fluid manner on the back of our head. When we shift our attention from the frontal cortex to the back of the head, as we fall asleep, we find ourselves in a different environment, which we call later a dream. But in the moment that we find ourselves in that dream, for the most part, we think that we are experiencing reality. And that reality that we experience inside a dream has its own internal logic, its own laws, its own sequence of events, its own memories. And so we're able to do and perceive things that seem absurd, illogical, impossible in the waking world. The difference between a dream and the waking is not the difference between fantasy and reality. It is simply the difference between different environments that our brain has created. The attention can be placed in one environment or the other. Just as in this moment, you're able to place your attention on the screen of your computer and find yourself in a computer-simulated environment, to the muting or detrimental information received from the room where your physical body is sitting in. In other words, the more attention you place on the details of the screen in front of you, the less information you receive of the room where your physical body sits. If something calls your attention, in your physical surroundings, your attention will move away from the screen and go to the door, to the window, to the child talking to you. And as you do that, you will notice that a lot of the attention that you were placing on the virtual world is removed so that you can place it in your physical world. There might be residual attention on one world as you move to the other. But once you find yourself immersed in the new simulation, in the new world, whether it's another dream or the waking, the more you begin to lose your hold on that vanishing reality where you used to be just a moment ago. The power of attention is the power to move from one world to the other, from one dream to the other. When we manage by will and attention to retain a memory of where we were just a moment ago, then we can begin to remember our voyages through our dreams, through other worlds, or even through this three-dimensional hallucination we call life. This attention can be trained. This attention can be moved at will. And so at will, regardless of whether you are sleeping or awake, you can choose to place it on the information that is being gathered by the frontal cortex, or on the information that is being gathered through the cerebellum. In other words, you can choose to perceive the consensus reality of the waking, or the subconscious reality of the dream. This can be done at any time. This can be done at will. And similarly, if you're in the middle of the dream, you can become aware of what is occurring in that simulation of the waking world that your frontal cortex is creating, so that within the dream you become lucid. In other words, within a dream, you remember yourself as the avatar that you have in the waking world. And in the waking world, your dream self can become lucid by remembering itself as the dream self that you create when you dream. Both together represent the totality of your being, which is not yet the highest and most true manifestation of yourself. It is only the unification of all the avatars that you have created, whether in the dreaming or in the waking. Acquiring a continuity of consciousness that allows you to make decisions under will, regardless of what dream you seem to be going through at the moment. You must become absolutely responsible for your experience and for your perception. We must come to terms with the fact that the reality I perceive, whether it's in a dream or in the waking, is the product of how I am dealing with the infinite light that is bombarding my senses at every moment. And that I have created a divided time and space inside myself, and that I have also created an image of myself to be able to navigate this simulation. If I forget myself, I come to see this avatar as my true self. But this is not my true self. This avatar is passing through a dream in this lifetime. It is attacked, offended, it might be killed, or it might suffer through illness and injustice. And yet, it is not me who is going through all that. It is me perceiving all that, but through an avatar that only exists inside this dream, that only exists in the simulation. And I have created these other avatars, and other dreams, and I can easily switch my consciousness from the current avatar to the other avatars. Becoming a voyager, a shapeshifter, a traveler of worlds, one who has many lives and many dreams, one who may become one through the experience of all persons. One most important technique we learned in any dream and in any whatsoever is the ability to remember oneself. The ability to remember oneself as the dreamer, so that I can distinguish between the one who dreams and the avatar that has been created in that dream. The effort necessary to remember myself as a dreamer is the kind of effort that ties a string of memory between one dream and the other. The untrained attention immerses you into the simulation you are creating in that moment. And when you disengage it to move into another simulation, nothing is threaded from the previous simulation to the new simulation. Nothing is thread from the world you were just in a moment ago and the world you find yourself in at this very moment. And so we go from dream to dream, from lifetime to lifetime, to avatar, from environment to environment, always thinking that this is where we have always been, always thinking that this is who I am, always thinking that this is what happens. When you acquire the habit of remembering yourself as a dreamer, you come to know when you switch, to know that you had just now been somewhere else, and remember where you were. but transition. The technique for remembering yourself is the most simple technique. It's just constant mantra. From the simple, I am that, I am, to the technique of invoking your presence into the present, to the technique of asking, and then proving yourself that this is not a dream by paying attention to all the details, all the sounds, the smells, the colors, the touch of matter. Acquire the habit of looking at each environment you find yourself and try to extract the granularity of that experience, every detail of it. A secondary technique which opens middle way is the technique of challenging the limits. Whenever you find yourself in a dream, bring the experience maximum. If you can fly in the dream, fly and go up and see how far. Move up, 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 up. Don't stop. Keep. Avoid the temptation of drifting back to sleep and put all your force into up. Up until you have exhausted all your, find yourself unable to go up and try to go up. You'll be surprised by where you wake up, where you find yourself. Such an effort. Alter the size of your body. Bigger and big and big until it cannot hold you. And growing solar system becomes the speck of light at the center of heart, and growing until the galaxy of your body, and keep growing until all the small big clusters have become so small that the entire universe seems to be a vanishing point in the distance, remote and silent within your own body. And in another dream, home around you, doubling in the size, the chairs, the walls, everything growing its size, and then twice its size again. And so you become smaller and smaller until you're able to perceive the in, and then smaller than that until you perceive the vibrations, molecules all around, and smaller than that. The universe is just a chaotic action of shimmering points, and then smaller than that, till every atom becomes as vast and impossible as itself. Change your form. Become the opposite gender of your dream. Live a dream as the opposite of who you are. Do good. Experience pain and suffering. Experience everything you're afraid of. Be devoured by a tiger. Let the jaguar tear off your face. Be buried alive, drown, be burnt at the stake. Notice your flesh decaying, your bones being, your body bloat and flow river. Die and death, dreams, expose yourself to that. Learn to not awake. You're about to die. Learn to die and see that always awake in your ordinary existence. That sometimes you awake after death in an impossibly alien human world. Become an animal, a crow, a cat. Become an inanimate object in your dreams. Be no one. Just an observer of the dream. Become the other people that you the dream. When dream that they are dreaming. Through walls, become a cloud. Be the wind that moves the leaves in the forest. Expand in your dreams of your imagination. Do not believe that your only experience, human experience, and not believe that the only possible human experience is the experience of your form, of your habitual ego. In every dream, you have the entirety of the human experience at your disposal. You can be one and anything that your mind can conceive. You will find in experiments tremendous freedom and the range of emotions, moods, the experience of millions of life in one. Practice creative, be dreams. If you're fearless in dreams, you will yourself applying fearlessness in your life. If you're able to lose form in your dreams, you'll find yourself beyond your ordinary form in your waking life. eventually, this will lead to that moment in which you're no longer just sensing. The simulation of reality created within your brain, but you're able to actually perceive outside simulation into the actual world, because you won't be perceiving with the senses anymore, but with another body that has become possible from the unification of your waking avatar with your dream avatar. You'll be able to perceive then the objective world, and from there live a life so difficult to explain, yet so magnificent, that any other portion of your ordinary life will pale in comparison. For every experience that you had within the simulation of reality of your brain will be duller, will be more muted than the direct raw perception of the light, which is bombarding all the senses of your body at this very moment. Live then without fear for the ending of the dream. There is no death other than the death of the avatar within a simulation. The fear of death comes from having come to believe that the form of the avatar is your actual reality. These experiments are designed to help you lose your form, overcome the insistence of the system to appear to you as the ultimate reality. They are designed to help you remember that you are the dreamer, and as a dreamer you are always creating an avatar. Go beyond the limits imposed by the simulation. Go beyond the ways in which the brain is glossing over the information to bring you to a more familiar world, a more predictable world. Go beyond. Discover and experiment. Dream this dream fearlessly, without prejudice, without fear, without attachment to your form. This, we will conclude discussion of the experiment and share your experiments. Are there any questions or comments? Sorry, Levon. Do you have a forbidden fruit or two with you? Koyote asks. It's a method to come back to the done this experience from Bruto. Well, the method is simply to remember or to remember the body. You have already created it before and you can create it again. But if you're asking how to come back to the body you had before these experiments, then let me know if you ever find a way, because everything changes. The body is different. Yet to come back to a body in this physical simulation, you simply have to remember it. The image of the body will bring you to the body. And Those Horizons says, it is hard not to identify the sense rendering of the brain as the real world. Yes, and that's good, because it's actually really hard in a dream to do that as well. One of the things that I often emphasize in the dreaming is to augment the quality of the experience. So look closely to the dream. Look at the colors, for example. Listen to the sounds and try to listen to the details of the sound. Touch a wall, a table, a tree, and feel the granularity of that experience. The more attention you put into it, the more real it becomes. After a while, it's really not easy at all to realize that you're dreaming, because that dream has become so real. We are used sometimes to go through the dreaming with minimal intention. But when you put yourself there and you push the envelope, as it were, then you begin to dream through senses that you didn't have before in the dreaming. There are many people who say that they cannot see colors in the dream, but you can train yourself to see color in the dream. You can train yourself to smell in the dream. You can train yourself to feel nuances of temperature and sensation in the dream. And anything that you do in the waking, you can do in the dreaming. It's difficult teach yourself to read. So next time you find yourself in a dream, read something. Read it carefully, word by word. Try to hold on to the word before it changes into something else. Follow the second hand of a watch for 1 minute. Do a ritual that you're used to doing in the day, in the waking. Do it in the dreaming. Build a house. Drive a car. Get dressed piece by piece in the same order that you do in the dreaming, in the waking, sorry. Augment the experience of the senses. And that will give more and more reality to each dream. And yet, in that dream, you will see more. You will perceive more. Remember that the brain tries to economize its resources. Instead of seeing from point A to point B, it simply puts an image of what it has seen before. So whatever is there in that fraction of a second, you don't see. And that's why there are so many beings that exist around us that we do not see in our normal state, because we are perceiving the holographic image that we have created of the world. And when our eyes see something, perceive something that we haven't built into our world, it will tend to gloss over it and not see it. The habit of questioning the dreaming, the habit of looking at the granularity of the experience, will open your senses to new information. It would enrich your reality by letting you see more than most people ordinarily see. Pilar asks, when remembering the body to come back to, is it possible to tweak things? For example, come back to the body which no longer has a particular ache. Yes. Yes, it's possible to recreate, reformat, to change even physical characteristics of the body. It requires more attention, but it is done more than we think. It is even possible to come back to a lifetime that is different, to a timeline that is different, to a moment in our lives that is different than the moment we departed. Any moment of our life is available. Any lifetime that you have ever lived is available at this moment. And anywhere, any environment where you have created an avatar is available. Thank you very much for your attention, and we will meet again next month. Aho mitaku, yes.